Hello, peeps. Coach here. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the structural analysis of Maria Stewart's Why We Sit Here and Die from 1832, long time ago. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at the, let me go ahead and move out of here. We're going to look at the hook, or rather the kairos, the very first paragraph that really tries to hook people in. Now, of course, there's elements of ethos, there's elements of logos, there's elements of pathos in there, but really this is all about kairos, timing. How do you hook people in using timing, as in what is relevant to them now, right now, okay? And then we want to look at really how kairos, what does it do to the audience? What is it meant to do to the audience? And so let's go ahead and dive in here and look at this timing. Okay, so the first thing we're really kind of looking at is what is it really causing here? And I'm going to say that it's causing urgency. Why? Urgency. She wants the audience to feel like they need to do something now. So how does she do that? She first starts out with, why ye sit here and die. And so really just kind of like, you're dying. Now everybody's dying, but really kind of she's saying, because you're sitting here, you're dying. And then she repeats that to really kind of connecting to possibly something that people say, like, we'll just leave here, we'll go back somewhere or wherever, we'll just leave America. And then but yet she says you will die if you do that too. And then she moves forward and again she repeats, if we sit here, we'll die. And so you can see that it's like a build-up to try to kind of impart some sort of urgency in the audience that right now is the time to do something or you're going to die. And then she repeats it again, except she repeats it in a sort of different way. She says they need to do something now because now, while you're alive, somebody can do something for you. And that is plead our cause before the whites. Because if you do that, they can save you while you're still alive. And then moving finally into really kind of looking at possibly a rebuttal. But if you do something, they might kill you, right? Right? Like the whites might kill you. But it says here, but we shall but die. As in, yeah, well, we're already dying. So if they kill us, we just but die. So really using this kairos, this sense of timing, to kind of appeal to the audience to move into some sort of urgency that you need to do something right now. Okay, and let's move into our second paragraph. Okay, so let's see how she defines the problem, moving on from the hook into the problem. And we can see right here, we start off with the problem. And such is the powerful force of prejudice. And so we have to really kind of look at this idea of such. So she's saying such. What is that? It seems a bit arbitrary. It's like saying this or that or it. So we really have to define it. And she sort of defines it prior, especially since she's using and. And if we come up here, we can see it defined. If they save us alive, we shall live. And if they kill us, we shall but die. In other words, you don't really have a say over whether you're going to live or die. It's somebody else does. And who does? The whites. Okay, so prejudice being, to a certain degree, it really depends on their opinion of us, and that being a powerful force. But I believe that she's using such here to also indicate what comes after the general problem of there being a powerful force of prejudice. And so we have two ideas connected by a semicolon. And as you know, when you have two ideas, especially when they seem contrary to each other, or why are they connected to each other, you have a juxtaposition. So you have two ideas, and putting them together forms a third implied idea. So if we look at the first section here, it's basically saying our girls, so girls of color, possess wonderful qualities of the soul, right? Spotless innocence, natural taste, ingenuity, okay? And so that's one idea. Then all of a sudden it comes into something negative, where it is impossible for scarce an individual of those beautifully souled women, of them to rise above the condition of servants. And servants here is really kind of, you're going to see a little bit later, it sort of emphasizes that servants are almost, if not slaves to their condition, and slaves to a certain degree, slaves to society because of this prejudice. And so what is that third idea right here? It is basically what I just said, and really kind of defines the problem as being that no matter how wonderful women of color are, they cannot, or they will not be allowed to move above their condition of being servants, servitude, or even you could even equate it to slavery. So let's see how she further defines the problem. We have a little more of an emphasis on this prejudice. It's an unfeeling distinction, as in people just do it. And so then she kind of launches into a bit of how God made their complexion to vary. And really she's kind of now indicating who is the victim here and who is the audience here. Now, Maria Stewart was a black woman. She basically is saying the same thing. She's saying that because they have a different complexion than others, so basically we're talking women of color, that they cannot rise above the station of being a servant. And so that is the defining factor here. This is the critical, the more detailed description of what the problem is. So it's not just being of color, it's actually being a woman of color. And so let's move forward into a little bit more of this. She first starts out with if it be, and again, if it, what's it? Okay, if this prejudice be, as in if this condition be, and then she says basically that it's a sad thing, and people try to hide it. And she brings in a quote about how people try to hide it, and she brings in a quote from the Bible. But let's move forward a little bit more, and she says, yet after all. And so, whoa, just went away. So yet after all, she's now bringing in, and let me go ahead and kind of zoom in on this one. And so he says, yet after all. And so really when she's bringing in yet after all, she's really kind of helping us to understand that now she's going to pull in the solution. And the solution's coming at the end of this paragraph. So methinks we were American free people of color. So thinking, hey, I think that we're supposed to be free, right? Even though we're people of color. But she's also saying, so what do we need to do? So on one hand, it says we need to bring more attention to our moral worth, but not just our morals, but to our moral worth. Like, what are we worth? And then she tells us, and the intellectual improvement, as in the audience, women of color, need to really kind of focus not just on their morals and but to improve their education, get an education, would eventually help them to lose their fetters. And fetters here are chains that hold them back, and it sort of is an allusion to being a slave. And so would lose their slavery, in other words, as in having to their condition of being a servant. So let's look at her first supporting argument towards what the problem is, as well as why women of color should attempt her solution. And let's go ahead and bring that full force and me out. Okay, so if we look at this argument, we're looking at that she's going to basically, her argument is what's bad for one group is bad for another group. So we want to look at what is the group and what's bad for them. So first off, she's talking about white persons, okay? So white persons, but not just white persons. When you think back then, when you think of just white person, you're thinking men, you're thinking of either sex. And this is important because she is talking about her audience is, the intended audience are women of color. And so there's the group, that's the group. Now what's bad for them, okay? That they are definitely not willing to perform mean servile labor. Now, performing mean servile labor, mean, I believe, is probably part of a British definition, since it's back in the 1800s. And mean meaning cheap. And servile labor, servile really kind of looking at labor that was kind of mainly designed slave type of labor. And so basically white persons of either sex are not willing to do this. And so why would any other group want to do this unless somehow conditions were changed? So what is the second group? Who's she comparing to? And so she basically is saying this would also be a horrible idea for people who possess noble souls, but not just noble souls, but noble souls who have hope, aspiring, as you can see here, who have hope to basically move towards higher and more honorable positions. And if we look at this, who are we talking about here? She already told us in the previous paragraph. There are people who are confined by chains. Chains sort of indicating servitude, or slavery, but these chains forged by ignorance and poverty. And so let's go ahead and go back in and look at who she implying. And she already talked about women who are fair, spotless, innocent, so noble souls, and women who are aspiring. In other words, individuals who are looking to rise above the condition of being service, so aspiring. So basically she's talking about women of color. Okay, but not only that, she just wants to kind of solidify, or at least emphasize, that these women who are of the second group are Americans, which back then could easily be kind of overlooked. So what's bad for one group is bad for another group. What's bad for white persons of either sex is performing cheap kind of labor that is under slave conditions is bad for another group. Who are this other group? Who are women of color, the audience, who are also Americans. And so in this third paragraph, completing her first supporting argument, urging her audience to live as true-born Americans who are not chained to poverty and ignorance, but may pursue more honorable conditions and professions.